begin? Did you hear that when I said something? Okay. Yep, yep.
Time is it?
It's a couple minutes after. Tanya's shutting the doors.
She's shutting the doors. Huh? Do you have any water?
No. It's in my purse right there. Thank you. Yes, that's it. Thank you, Ted. Julio, I don't know how he got me to do this.
It's a Saturday.
It's just a Saturday.
It's a Saturday. I thought it was gonna be a full house. We've been robbed.
I know.
I thought we were gonna have a full house here
That
tonight.
made
This
it
is ridiculous. I don't perform under these stages. I don't perform under these conditions.
Which one? Oh, okay.
When to start?
Okay.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Testing. Good morning. Good morning, dear listeners. We're testing just before starting our broadcast.
Hold on to the podium a little bit. Give yourself a little support.
Oh, okay.
You know, just like if you
Can you
want,
hear
like,
us?
you're holding the paper, whatever it is. For another hand,
Can you hear us?
you know, if you hang on to this, you can like tap it a little bit. And,
Make it look a little casual.
you know, if you have a little bit of like a nervous tick, sometimes people like,
Oh, that's a good idea.
you know, so you just hang on to this.
Okay.
Good morning, dear listeners.
This is when we start.
His hand goes down.
We're
Okay.
testing.
Yeah, we're gonna
Good
start.
morning.
Okay.
Good morning.
Okay.
Oh wait, we're gonna speak right into it. Yeah.
Okay.
Ma'am?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Katie Surgeon.
And I'm Ted Gorab.
In the name of the United States Spiritist Federation and all collaborating Spiritist organizations, we would like to welcome you all to the 13th U.S. Spiritist Symposium.
Yes. As many of you know, this is our national annual event, which takes place in a different city and a different state every year. And this year, we are thrilled to host the 13th Symposium in the Garden State of New Jersey, in the great Garden State of New Jersey. Yes. And in this beautiful auditorium at Keene University, right?
Yes. The Spiritist Symposium is the single most relevant national Spiritist event where the majority of Spiritist centers and affiliated members join forces to work together and share experiences. This year, 35 Spiritist organizations across the U.S. have sponsored this event. We would like to thank the organizing members of the United States Spiritist Federation, as well as the local volunteers from the Spiritist Societies of New Jersey, from the Tri-State, and from many different cities and states across the U.S.
And let's welcome those who came a long way to share this day with us, from many different states and many different countries. Thank you also to those who are watching our symposium live via the USSF Facebook page and YouTube channel, and listening to it via the Spiritist Radio of Atlanta. Stay tuned, everyone.
Okay, this is very important. Please silence your cell phones if you haven't already, or turn them off. And at this time, I will invite Stephen Honton, a member of the Allan Kardec Spiritist Society of Massachusetts, to say the initial prayer so we can start our day all connected to the enlightened spirits.
Good morning. So let's relax, close our eyes, let go of our thoughts and worries, and raise up our thoughts. Raise up our souls to the dear Lord, thanking God for the opportunity to be here now, for us to learn, to grow, whether it's the first time we've encountered Spiritism or we've been here for many years. May we each get something new, friendship, understanding, love in our hearts. We ask for the guardian spirits to be here, to make this place sacred for each of one of us, that we too may be able to understand a little bit more about ourselves, and that we can spread the message that Spiritism gives to each one of us. We want to send out prayers to all those people who are seeking something like what Spiritism brings. We also send out prayers to all those leaders of the world who need guidance, who need suggestions on how they should be thinking about others, not just their own needs. So those leaders who are political, who are spiritual, within their own families, that they too recognize that it is not just about themselves, but about the whole world and every spirit that we encounter, whether it is in a physical form or from the other side. And so we ask for our spirits to be with us, for Jesus to give us the inspiration that we may have a fantastic symposium today. So be it.
Thank you, Stephen. So before we start our day of learning, let's take care of some practical yet important reminders. Next door to the auditorium, kids and teens are having a full day of activities and learning. And this year, for the very first time, the age groups have expanded all the way from babies to 18 years old, which could be babies still, you never know. For those who dropped off your kids, please make sure you fill out all the required paperwork. Otherwise, head on back and do it. It is important.
For information about Spiritist centers close to you, check out the list of centers inside your tote bags or speak to one of our volunteers. Volunteers are wearing white pants or white shirts and black pants today. If you have some specific questions about Spiritism, please make sure you ask them at the welcome station in the lobby. And if you are in need of fraternal private conversations today, please schedule one at the welcome station, and they are on a first-come, first-served basis.
Now, before we start our program, we are pleased to introduce a cause that touches our hearts, and we feel it is important to increase the awareness of their work so people like we can help. The Fraternity Without Borders US is a non-governmental organization that establishes shelters in places where hunger, misery, and helplessness turn the innocent into victims every day. Its volunteers work in Brazil, Madagascar, Mozambique, and Senegal. And in Africa, it hosts approximately 12,000 children. 9,000 of them are orphans. Many of them have AIDS and are living with this disease, as well as their parents.
The support of these boys and girls, as well as the elderly, is done through volunteers who dig wells, build homes, and provide elementary education. Through their work, orphans receive daily food, school supplies, hygiene guidance, and organized activities. There are also caravans composed of volunteers from different areas of specialization, including doctors, dentists, educators, pedagogues, engineers, psychologists, and nurses that provide aid to refugees and others in need. Fraternity Without Borders U.S. relies on donations and sponsorship to fund the work of its volunteers. Many lives have helped. You can make a difference starting today at this event by purchasing t-shirts at their table in the lobby. You can also get more information about this cause. And if you feel called to do so, please participate.
Also in the lobby, don't forget to check out these great Spiritist books for sale during the breaks. Different titles, including books for children, are available. There are 3 new book releases with special prices just for today. Spiritist Prayers by Allan Kardec, The Big Enigma by Leon Dennis, Living is the Best Choice by Andre Triguerio. Please make sure to go by and check them out. They look really good. Especially for today, all the books are on sale. Children's books are $5. Normally they're $10 to $15. So don't miss this great deal. And please prepare for our morning Q&A session. In your tote bags, you're going to find a paper and a pen. Excuse me. Write your questions addressed to the different speakers. Leave them at the registration desk or give it to a volunteer.
And now, the moment we've been waiting for, we are ready to start our program. All of us have an innate need for emotional well-being, and yet most of us are not aware that the path to it is through self-realization, self-knowledge. Let's analyze who we really are. How do we take advantage of multiple lives? How are we transforming our lives through our inner transformation and the exercise of love? These are some of the topics we will be discussing today over our discussions and conversations.
And talking about self-knowledge, do we really know who we are? Do we really? What is our true essence? It's time to begin our first talk series. We would like to introduce our first speaker, JULIO CARVALHO, that will talk about the essential being, an exploration of our true nature. JULIO is the founder and the co-director of the Spiritist Center Divine Light in Newark, New Jersey. He is also a member of the Tri-State Spiritist Federation, where he works actively in the Department of Public Speaking, providing training courses for Spiritist workers. Each year, he participates in the National and International Congress representing the U.S. and the Tri-State Spiritist Federation, and I know he was a brother of mine in a former life. That's very few.
Everyone, allow me to start by wishing peace in our hearts. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here, especially those that have traveled. Every year, I have to travel for this conference. Now I'm here in the beautiful state of New Jersey. Took me 10 minutes to get here. My theme will be the exploration of our true nature, the essential being. There are 2 worldviews prevailing in today's society. One is creationism, which is a theistic worldview, meaning from this point of view, there is a divinity, a deity, a God that has created everything. And then we have the atheistic point of view, worldview, which is evolution. So today I want to present these 2 worldviews, and then I'll give to you our worldview. In creationism, God created everything. And there are different kinds of creationists, those who defend the idea that a deity created the cosmos. There are the young earth creationists. These are the individuals that they truly believe in the literal interpretation of the Bible. The Genesis book is a sacred book. They truly believe that the earth was created in 7 days, despite of what the geologists have found in the geological records. Then we have the old creationists, old earth creationists. These individuals, they go by what science says. Geology states that the earth was created, and so was the solar system, in about 4.5 billion years ago. So these individuals, they truly believe that the book of Genesis it's right, but they don't take a little interpretation. They adapt the scientific knowledge that they have in order to understand the book of Genesis. There are different kinds of old earth creationists. There are those who are called the gap creationists. They believe that the world was actually created in 7 days. But between the first day and the second day, there was a gap of millions of years. Then between the second and the third day, there was a gap of millions of years. And that make up for the 7 days that they understand the Genesis book is literally right, because they consider there is a gap there. And all these gaps and all these interpretations, they are not created out of thin air. They read the Bible, they read the book of Genesis, and they find interpretation of how the words were used in those contexts of that day. And then there is the intelligent design individuals. The intelligent design individuals are scientists that through their scientific research, they conclude that some intelligence of a sort had to create things. For example, the cosmos. Scientists, they believe that in the entire cosmos was created 13.7 billion years ago. And how they came up with that? Well, back in 1925, there was a famous astronomer named Edwin Hubble. And Edwin Hubble was examining our galaxy. And he noticed there was a particular star, and he calculated the period of that star, and he realized the star was actually located in a different galaxy. Now, can you imagine this? Our entire conception of the cosmos, of the universe, it was our galaxy. So in a period of 24 hours, we find out that the universe is not composed of one galaxy, but millions of them. But the most interesting fact that Edwin Hubble found out is the fact that the galaxies, they were spreading from one another. This is called the redshift analysis. So he noticed the galaxies, they were not static in space, but they were moving apart. So scientists concluded then that if they are moving apart and they're speeding up on this movement, there was a point in time by regression that all these galaxies were compacted in one single point. They call this the singularity. And boom, that was the Big Bang, which caused space, time, matter, energy, everything that we know. That's one of the intelligent design's claim. How can nothing be able to create everything? That must be a transcendental cause causing everything, because science states nothingness cannot create something. So the obvious question is, what was before the Big Bang. Now, another way of looking at this from the creationist point of view that believe in intelligent design are the construction of cells. Now, everything in our body has proteins. Proteins is one of the building blocks of our bodies. Proteins are made up of amino acids, 20 of them. And there are different kinds of folding of proteins in order to make the construction of a cell possible. So biologists, they look at the folding of proteins to understand evolution. And the interesting thing is, by allowing natural mechanisms to make a protein fold into a functional form, by random chance, it would take way longer than 13.7 billion years. So these individuals, they ask themselves, how can we believe in evolution, natural means of everything being created and developed, that proteins will take way longer than the actual existence of the universe? So for them, it's evidence of intelligent design. There had to be a mind there producing this stuff. And the last but not least, one of the concepts of intelligent design is the fact that DNA that constructs proteins, it's actually a coding machine. There is information in DNA that makes the synthesis of proteins possible. But the question is, who programmed the molecule to function that way? Because the molecule carries information. The molecule does not produce information, but has information. So for intelligent design and creationists, they understand that this is evidence of a mind. Because in our modern world, information can only come from one place, mind. Now, these intelligent designs, creationists, they are not saying that this mind is a specific deity. They're simply saying this cannot be a result of natural process. So then there is the other explanation for everything, which is evolution and natural process. Now, this idea was born with Charles Darwin in the year 1859. And let me rephrase that. This is 1859. Charles Darwin, he published a book entitled The Origin of the Species. That book was published 2 years after the Spiritist book. Charles Darwin, he went on this boat called the Beagle, and around the world he sailed collecting different data, and he found out that certain birds, although they belong to the same species, their beaks were actually different depending on the island that the bird was. And what he inferred from this is that the bird had to adapt his beak in order to eat the food that was available in that particular island. So the beak was molded according to what was available for that bird. So he called this process natural selection. And reason being, it's because if you're a bird and you don't have the right beak for that island, you will eventually die. But if you have the morphological means to mold your beak and actually eat the food that is available, you are most likely to survive, you are most likely to reproduce, you're most likely to pass on your traits to your offspring, and your offspring will continue adapting their morphological structure in order to survive in that particular island. So this is called the natural selection process. And the interesting thing about natural selection is the fact that we constantly select our animals. And this is called artificial selection. If you're a farmer, for example, and if you want a fast horse, you would make sure that you're breeding the two fastest horses that you have, a male and a female. If you want a fast horse, it's illogical that you breed the two slowest horses that you have. So we constantly are selecting what is best. That's called artificial selection. And we do this with birds, with fish, with cows. Now, there are a lot of criticisms about evolution from the creationists. One of them is, how can everything have a beginning without a cause? Once again, how can nothing sprung to something? Another criticism is that from the creationist point of view, by looking at what the naturalists say, life has no meaning. You're here, you're born, you grow, you die, and then you become food for the worm. For the naturalists, they say, you give meaning to life. But from a philosophical point of view, life has no meaning. We're here, we adapt, we move forward, we die, we disappear. And that's the biggest criticism. Creationists also criticize evolutionists because they say this theory of natural selection allows free exercise of selfishness. And what is selfishness? I only think about me, me, me. And there is this, one of the most astonishing atheists of our time, Richard Dawkins. He wrote a book entitled The Selfish Gene. And in this book, he claims that, species, they try to fight one another in order for survival. However, looking back on his book, he gave an interview and he said if he was today, he would actually change the title of his own book and place it instead the altruistic gene. And reason being, it's because species, animals, they have to look after one another in order for the entire group to survive. Because if each individual are truly selfish, they won't be able to survive as a species. They all will kill one another just to survive. And he says this because even in animals, we can see evidence of true altruism. He talks about an eagle that has a nest, and he sees an animal that is a prey to the eagle's nest. And what the eagle does, as they see this animal approaching, the eagle will fake that it has a broken wing. And he will walk away from the nest, and now this predator will follow the eagle. And as the predator gets very close and away from the nest, the eagle flies away. So the eagle actually had an altruistic action. He put his own life in danger in order to protect the nest. And we see this over and over again in the natural world. Meaning to be altruistic is not a matter of faith, but it is embedded in the natural process that we care for everyone else. And fine-tuning, it's another gigantic criticism of the creationists about evolution. There are different parameters in the universe that makes the universe possible. The speed of light, the force of gravity, the weak force, the strong forces. And there are more than 30 of them. They all have to be carefully synchronized with one another, fine-tuning, in order to make the universe possible. One of the most delicate parameter for the universe to be possible is the rate of expansion. And that rate of expansion, if it's just a little bit more or a little bit less, the universe wouldn't be able to come into existence. Now, evolutionists, they say, well, you know what? This is not evidence of a supreme being just because we have all these parameters closing tight together, working together to make the universe possible, this fine-tuning. What we have instead is an infinite amount of universes, also called multiverses. And our universe just happened by chance, and chance alone, to make life possible. Now, we have to ask the question, who created the other universes? We come back to square one. So criticism about naturalists on reference to creationism. Whenever you speak about evidence of a creator, the first question evolutionists ask is, which God are you talking about? Is it Buddha? Is it Allah? Is it Jesus? That's the first criticism. And the second criticism is, well, you guys, whenever you find a challenge in science, you always put God in there. It's the God of the gap. But by intelligent design, you're not placing God. You're simply saying there has to be a mind creating everything. Another big criticism of naturalists on creationists is the fact that creationists give a bad example. Unfortunately, throughout history, more people have been killed by religious wars than regular wars. So how can we preach about love and kindness and yet religious people, they kill themselves? And the biggest is the deny of evolution. Because by the fossil record, we noticed evolution took place. Now, what's our view, the Spiritist point of view? Well, we actually combine aspects of theism and atheistic principles. And what are these aspects? Evolution took place. Not in 7 days, but according to what geologists say, 4.5 billion years ago. And life on our planet started 3.5 billion years ago. But what we also say is that we were not subject only to natural selection, but also to artificial selection. We were designed by beings that are highly evolved. And these beings were not created, already evolved by a supreme intelligence. Everything in nature is under evolution. And the individuals who are in a highly state of mind, those who are already evolved, they worked themselves to that level. All of us, we go through this process of evolution. So these higher beings that have evolved in different schools of knowledge that we call planets, they designed us. And they continue to play a role in our evolution. So the biggest criticism of creationists on evolution is they say, where are the fossil records that show the transition that once a monkey became a man? Or a marsupial became a monkey? Where are the transitional fossils? Well, you wouldn't find them in nature. And reason being, it's because the transition happened in the spiritual world. An intelligent principle is something that will evolve to become a spirit. So when an animal dies, the intelligent principle of that animal is now in a different dimension called the spiritual plane. And the intelligent principle in the spiritual plane will be molded, will be changed by these highly evolved minds in order to mold a new biological body. So the artificial selection was made in the spiritual plane. And as the intelligent principle reincarnates, it enters into a new flesh. It would now have to adapt to its environment. So at the same time, the intelligent principle molds its own body, the effects of the body changes the intelligent principle, and then we become spirits. So we are the gods to the animals. Once we were animals. Psychologically, some of us are still animals. But our bodies were animals, and now we achieved the age of men. But our job is not concluded, because both men and women will continue to evolve to achieve a higher state of mentality, of capabilities, until it achieves perfection. And when it achieves perfection, it's what we consider to be in a Christ state of evolution. So we don't see Jesus as a God. Jesus is someone who went through this natural process, through artificial selection, through natural selection, and he became a perfect being. And as a perfect being, he came here in order to instruct us what to do with our lives in order for us to achieve this state of perfection. And basically, it's very simple to understand. Do unto others as you wish others would do unto you. Simple to understand, pretty hard to put into practice. What are the tenets of Spiritism and how Spiritism sees the being? Well, we are here to evolve, to progress. When people start reading this literature, the first question they ask themselves is, now, what's my mission? Your mission is to improve yourself. Everything else that is written are details of how to do that, to improve yourself. So there is a supreme intelligence in power, in charge of everything. This supreme intelligence is not a being of some sort. It's not a he, it's not a she. All we know about the supreme intelligence is that it is the supreme intelligence, the first cause of all things. And that intelligence created you towards perfection. And you achieve that perfection according to your own efforts. It would take many different schools, and these are the different planets in the universe. And we get lots of help from individuals who are highly evolved, and they come back here to let us know what we're supposed to do. And we have compiled that information into one book, Our Duties Towards Ourselves and Others, in the book entitled The Spirit's Book. The book is very suggestive because it tells you where it came from spirits. Spirits, highly evolved individuals who have achieved perfection, and they're letting us know what is it that we have to do, our obligations. And what we truly learn is that altruism does not only happen in the physical world, but most importantly, in the moral world. When we become spiritists, in other words, when we understand this knowledge, there are 4 immediate applications to it. 1, the cessation of fear of death. We no longer fear that we're going to die. And why? Because now we know it's a natural selection process, or we are instruments of artificial selection. All it's happening, we are just abandoning a biological vehicle, but you will continue to exist. Second consequence of knowing the Spiritist knowledge is the fact that now you have tolerance towards the imperfections of others. And why? Because you know that these are beings who are in the process of evolution. And just like the same way you have imperfections that others have to tolerate, there are plenty of imperfections in others that you have to tolerate. Third application of knowing this knowledge to become a better being is the fact that now we have resilience to overcome life's challenges. And why is that? That's because you became aware that you are a being in evolution. All the things we call, we label them as pain, we label them as problems. They're nothing but opportunities for natural and artificial selection to select the traits that will make you a happier person. And fourth is gratitude. And why, knowing this information, the application is gratitude? Well, that's because now you realize what you have, because we are so concentrated in what we lack. You become then a happy person. Even if you have pain and troubles, you're not in a state of despair. You cool yourself down because you're grateful for what you have and not so much miserable for the things that you don't need and then you lack. So for that, we have made a variation with an adaptation of a famous poem written by Amelia Rodriguez entitled Gratitude, that really sums up some of the things we can be grateful for. She says, invariably, people complain. Some in joy, most in pain, concentrated in what they lack, unaware of the abundance, oblivious to the importance of everything they have. Supreme intelligence of the universe, I proclaim throughout these verses a synthesis of my thankfulness. For ceaselessly you provide, regardless of human pride, who attributes all to randomness. Thank you for my feet, for this journey is replete of walks, runs, and dances. Nevertheless, I see the handicapped, paralyzed, amputated, trapped within boundaries for advances. But their pain is temporary. To transcend it, it is necessary the comprehension of life's law. Suffering is a means of expiation, paths to better reincarnations, which expunge our flaws. Thank you for my hands, and the hands which stands for justice, liberty, and life. Hands of surgeons, architects, conductors. Hands of chemists, farmers, sculptors. Hands of nurses, helpers, and midwives. But above all, I am amazed with the hands which have embraced an orphan with ineffable tenderness. Hands of love and charity, which confirms that solidarity is a matter of togetherness. Thank you for my eyes. I am marveled staring in the sky. The stars, the sun, the moon. In awe I always see birds, flowers, nature's jubilee, the twilight in the afternoon. Because I can contemplate friends, relatives, a soulmate. I pray for who lacks sight. In their next existence, by overcoming shadow's resistance, they will again perceive light. Thank you for my voice and the voices which rejoice our lives with indescribable beauty. Singers, educators, speakers, preachers, legislators, teachers, mediums of a sublime duty. Because we can always speak, in my prayers I seek to encourage who can't verbalize. But their aphasia is transitory. They will recite a new story in their succeeding life. I'm grateful I can hear sounds far and near, harmonizing nature and musicians. A master's melody or rhyme requires a single time to become an unforgettable rendition. Due to my auditory sense, sympathies to all I dispense who are deprived of sounds. But their trial will be over. In the next reincarnation, sounds will come around. In conclusion, Supreme Intelligence, I'm grateful for the prevalence of a place we call home. If it's new or old, made of bricks or gold, a shack or a penthouse dome, what's essential is to share, for love flourishes everywhere when it wants to thrive. Parents, spouses, sons and daughters, sibling neighbors, friends and partners, they all enrich our lives. At times, our only asset is the company of a friendly pet, a dog who diminishes our solitude. But even if I'm all alone, without a place to call home, I will still profess my gratitude. For your love transcends, providence everywhere extends, nurturing progress and affection. Thank you, Supreme Intelligence, for your infinite benevolence towards our happiness and perfection. Thank you, God, for the blessing of speaking, and to you all, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Julio. It feels like just knowing ourselves is not quite enough, and that we need to keep working on our personal evolution through our multiple lives and immortality. To explore this idea, let's welcome our next speaker, MARCIA TRAJANO, for her talk entitled Making Sense of Reincarnation. MARCIA TRAJANO is a member of the Board of Directors of the Christian Spiritist community of Atlanta, Georgia, that she co-founded in 1997. For the past 2 decades, she has been engaged in different areas, including youth education and delivering classes on inner transformation, fraternal assistance, and mediumistic activities. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. I can see you, but I don't know if you can see me behind the podium. Oh. Can somebody help me with the... Sorry. I just have 3 slides. The next slide, can somebody help me? There you go. No, that's the last one. No, this is the first one. Sorry, I'm here now. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Very, very happy to be here. And I just want to say thank you, JULIO, for introducing this today's activities. And I'm here today to ask you, shall we talk a little bit about death? Right? My goal is for the next few minutes for us to understand death a little bit better, and as a result, for us to be better prepared to handle this topic that is so difficult for so many of us. On a personal note, last year, 2018, was a very difficult year for me. My mother spent over 2 months in the ICU, and in that drama that preceded her disincarnation, her departure from us in the physical realm, all of those, including myself, who were involved, were somehow forced to confront the very idea of death and dying. From many different backgrounds and belief systems, there are some Buddhists, Catholics, atheists, Spiritists, you name it. Collectively, we were all confronted by unanswered questions about death, and at the same time, consumed by the fear of dying and by the panic of losing someone so, so dear to us. But this drama is not unfamiliar to most of us here. Yet, it is part of the great mystery called living. Francis Bacon, the 17th century British philosopher, said, "Man fear death as children fear to go in the dark. And as the natural fear in children is increased by tales, so is the other." And there we are, 4 centuries later, our society still struggles with this notion. And generally, our society deals in this topic with a very sanitized fashion. Yet for us to overcome this inherent fear, it is so important for us to talk about death and to examine it very closely. Thank you. Sorry for that. One aspect that we recognize in our material lives is this body. This incarnation was loaned to us for a very specific amount of time. Soon enough, it will be time for me, for us, to leave. We all have an expiration date. Maybe a few years, maybe a few minutes. Each of us have a different expiration date, but let's pretend that our expiration date for all of us here was May 4th, 2019 at around 9:50. Oops. We could ask ourselves, are we ready to die? Did we kiss our loved ones before we came here? Did we tell them how much we love them? Did we forgive those who messed up? Did we ask forgiveness for those who we messed up? We hurt them? Are all of our affairs in order? Death is messy, right? We know we should be ready, but no one ever is. The famous Brazilian medium, Chico Xavier, suggests that we live as if we knew we were going to die, so that one day we could die as if we knew how to live. So proceeding from that, we come to terms with this sense of, do we really know the process of dying? We all assume, in fact, that dying is a bad thing. Who told us that dying is a bad thing? We have died so many times before this time. We, all of us here, should be able to internalize the idea of removal of a stigma and even the sense of something catastrophic or even tragic about dying. But to do so, we need to die well, which requires living well. Most of us are conditioned to worry about our material existence, right? Things like having enough money to have a comfortable life, but somehow we forget to worry about gaining enough knowledge so that we also have a comfortable death. The problem about our death is a problem of attachment, sometimes also about guilt. But we should reflect a little bit about it, right? And we realized how attached we are to here and now. We should ask, if we have guilt, what have we done? Have we hurt ourselves? Have we hurt others? Another question is when we face the death of others, which is also a question of attachment. Oh, we feel sad. We feel surprised. We feel absence. Who ever said losing a loved one was easy? Dying too soon is another question, but then who told us that dying at 12, 35, 82 was too soon? My mother was 90. How long are we going to live is not in the span of our control, but to live well is. And that simply means controlling our imperfections, living well with one another, serving. The reverse of that is not dying well, which just may means dying without accomplishing anything, or in some cases, living what I call a placebo life. There are so many questions about what happens after we die. Where do we go? Is there heaven and hell? Well, according to Spiritism, life after death has a substantial meaning. Thank you, Julio, again. And depending on the state of our consciousness, we will go to a very enlightened space or not so, quite dark ones. How? When do we end this, endless cycle of birth and rebirth? When we reach the state of pure spirits. Do we ever achieve meaning as a human being? And the answer to that is that our spiritual life will be fully manifested when we achieve perfection. But then what is perfection? When we reach that state of simplicity and intelligence. So the trajectory toward perfection is when we can indeed eradicate pride and selfishness in us. Not an easy feat, because it is so rooted in who we are today. Knowing that we are immortal souls, we can also ask, if we are immortal, why do we have to reincarnate? And if we agree that reincarnation is a chance to grow, to improve, to learn, why can't we do that elsewhere? This corporeal life is a great life. It is where we have a chance to learn. And learning in the flesh, I call it, is to confirm our learning not in the flesh. A good way for me to understand that, the need to be here now, is simply if I imagine somebody who goes to medical school and spends X number of years studying, reading, it's all theoretical, and before that learning is truly absorbed, understood, integrate, internalize, that person has to go through years of practice. It's practicum, it's residency. And that is how I understand, that's how I can understand that those two needs for learning. So if we agree that we have a life and that we need to come back to learn, then my next question is, well, how many deaths, how many lives? And as I said before, as many as necessary, right? So while we know that we have an expiration date in this life, we don't have an expiration date on the timeline of our immortal soul's trajectory. Are we the body we see in the mirror? It's good to see the answer to that comes both from Pope Francis as well as Chico Xavier again, because they tell us we are here to become better. We're here in this journey of inner transformation. We are here to transform ourselves in pure spirits. And when we die on earth, we are reborn in the spiritual realm. When we're born on earth, we die, figuratively speaking, in the spiritual realm, and that is a temporary phase. And again, we do that with the purpose to broaden our experience, to learn with different perspectives. Today, I'm a woman. Tomorrow, I may not be a woman. And what about our ego? Oh, goodness, that is such a source of troubles. During our material experience, many of us end up thinking that the ego, that the body, is our real identity. When we do so, we start to think of ourselves in terms of illusory identification, body type, gender, race, nationality, religion, profession, etc., etc. We do know, however, that our identity is found in our soul, our spirit. So for the sake of argument, let's reverse this question here. If we are not a spirit, live in a material body, would there be a point in identifying with this biological construct, this collection of cells? This is subject to disease. This is subject to aging, to dying. It has a beginning, a birth, and frequently unpredicted end, its death. It has so many fragile components. Without the spirit, what is this? A lump of lifeless chemicals, and for those Star Trek fans, an ugly bag of water. So life after death is actually understood as reincarnation. Re, again, in, enter into, carna from Latin, flesh, body, reincarnation. Reincarnation is a religious or philosophical concept that the spirit after one's biological death begins a new life in a new body. So we often joke when we hear and understand and adopt and accept reincarnation as part of our trajectory. And we often think, oh yes, we were kings, we're pharaohs, we're maharajas, shamans, emperors. Secretly, we all wish it was true. But the discussion about this topic of reincarnation is one of the tenets of Spiritism, as was mentioned before. It is also beyond being one tenet of Spiritism, it's a major subject and topic of research. And many non-Spiritist books have been written about this subject. So as a Spiritist, I'm so excited to actually understand that there are more people who believe in reincarnation than there are not. There's so many books written exploring the topic in the search of its proof. Some of the ones that are mostly familiar are Dr. Ian Stevenson, psychiatrist and author of many books. Dr. Brian Weiss, his one of the books that is amazing for most of us is Many Lives, Many Masters. Tom Schroeder, Michael Newton, Helen Opic, and so on and so on. So if we think in terms, Spiritism talk about reincarnation, non-Spiritist research talk about reincarnation, but beyond those two communities, there are actually many, many famous people that are talking about it. They believe in reincarnation, and they have documented, they stated something about it. So who are they, just so that we can frame ourselves? Socrates, 3rd century BC, was already talking about reincarnation. Pythagoras, Plato, Rumi, favorite poet from the 13th century, Gauguin, French painter, and he goes on and on. Mahatma Gandhi, Walt Whitman, Benjamin Franklin from the U.S., Mark Twain, Churchill, etc., etc. One that I would like to bring about is actually a certain Giordano Bruno. In the 1600s, he was tortured and burned by the Inquisition, and this Dominican priest and philosopher was put to death because he preached about life after death. Oh goodness, aren't we lucky? We are not Giordano Bruno. We're talking about this very topic in a microphone. But does reincarnation make sense? From a purely material perspective, as mentioned, scientists globally research the topic with the one focus, which is the understanding this phenomenon of life after death. And besides all of the proofs, all the books, everything that we have documented, there's still people that do not believe in reincarnation. Maybe they're guided by the idea of not only believing that they cannot understand what they cannot see, they cannot touch or smell, but then we know that's not reality, right? Are we equipped to really only absorb what we can see, smell, touch? What about microorganisms? What about seeing the dark? What about distant galaxies? What about hearing below a certain frequency, so on and so forth? What we perceive in reality is such a small part of a much larger reality. Maybe like the tip of an iceberg, where the larger part of an iceberg is underwater. The larger part of our spiritual existence cannot be perceived by our material senses. So we are so blessed with God's incredible mercy. God gives us the gift of life after life. God gives us the possibility of not enter eternal suffering. Instead, God we find and we accept is the one of a loving Father that provides us with so many opportunities. Opportunities to learn, opportunities to fail, opportunities to try again, opportunities to improve. So in summary, for a little bit over 150 years, we have learned through the teachings given to us through Kardec and Spiritism that we are spirits. We've been created simple and ignorant, neither good or bad, just naive. Through our lives, we become more and more able to be our own evolution, incarnation after incarnation. We grow, we evolve, we become better, we become less imperfect. Spiritism is this platform that helps us understand additional questions, such as, why am I suffering? Why are there people that are so difficult to deal? At home, at work? Why is my family life so hard? Why is it difficult for me to relate with some and so easy with the others? When we allow ourselves to ask such questions and take time to reflect upon them, we naturally gravitate toward that idea of becoming better at everything. The journey toward this inner transformation is the greatest advantage, the greatest benefit of living. And it's a constant invitation to us that Spiritism gives. Spiritism provides that evidence, that explanation about death, disincarnation, explanation about birth, incarnation, and the cycle, reincarnation. It helps me, it helps us make sense of reincarnation. And once we become aware of our very existence of immortal souls, our lives automatically begins to change. Allan Kardec declares the spirit should not fear death because life ceases to be a hypothesis to become a reality. And with this knowledge, we also find that we have eternity to reach our spiritual destiny. I am so very thankful for Spiritism. I am so very thankful for the opportunity to learn. And the body of knowledge that is the foundation of this discussion is also the foundation of all the topics throughout the day today. Thank you so much for being here. And I just wanted to say that there are many, many resources out there to learn more about the core tenets of Spiritism, which includes death and reincarnation. There are so many gems in the spiritual literature about the subject, but one in particular was very helpful to me during my time of grieving for my mom earlier this year. I don't believe this book is in English yet, but I would recommend, if you're ever in a situation like me where you had to breach people from many different philosophies and belief systems, this little book, easy to read, by Alexandre Caldini, he wrote in the form of a conversation. And that conversation was actually with a 14-year-old daughter of his friend who had gone through this abrupt death of her own mother. And so that's one that I would say, try to see if you need it, I would recommend that. But there are many others that deal with this topic that are very dear to me. Herculano Pires, Leon Denis, who's my very favorite author, in his book Here and Hereafter, or Death, who maybe even be here today, very easy to read and talk to us, that learning to speak about it, learning to examine, learn to not look at death again as a sanitized topic, right? We don't need to hide what happens to us. We need to look at it in a very natural way. Of course, Allan Kardec. Spirit's book, chapter 2, I believe from questions 140 to 165, it's very interesting because Allan Kardec asks questions, and he keeps pushing the questions. So what happens? Is it abrupt? Do I fly away? There's one of the questions, 155, where he says, do we just flip the switch, right? We're alive and then we're dead. What happens? And in a very poetic way, the spirits answer that it's not like a bird that is in a cage and just flies away. That death is very gradual. And as such, there are many implications of that process that is good for us to hear. So I just say to you, go, read, talk to your children. Bring the subject not as something so foreign to us that is so difficult to happen, to face, to discuss, and nearly destroy so many of us. It nearly destroyed me. With 2 decades of reading about Spiritism, I could not almost survive the pain of death. So with that, I say thank you and good journey for all of us. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Ms. Trajano. What a blessing and a challenge reincarnation is, all at the same time. Tell you. Remember to write your questions down and give them to one of the volunteers at the front desk so that the Q&A moderator can collect them. Anybody smell that? Coffee. Why don't we all take a break? There's coffee and tea in the lobby. And if you have any questions, there's just coffee. If you have any questions, please write them down. And like I said, give them to the volunteers. Check out some of the books we have in the back, especially the ones that are on sale now. And don't forget to go by the welcome station to schedule the fraternal conversation or to chat about the Spiritism. We're going to start up again at 10:45. Try to be back here a few minutes before, okay? Enjoy your break, everyone.
Hello, dear Spiritist radio listeners. Now, this event is going on a break. It will be about 30 minutes break, which will end at 10:45. So, lectures will resume at 10:45. But first, we had JULIO Carvalho speaking the essential being, an exploration of our true nature, and then MARCIA TRAJANO, making sense of reincarnation. So now, real quick, this is Flavio Zanetti. What are you thinking about the event? How you like it?
So if you're not listening to this, you're missing out. This is an amazing event. We're here, a lot of great people, great folks. A lot of interesting knowledge, and I hope you're listening to us, and if you're not, please tune in.
Thank you, Flavio. Tell your friends about our this event, this symposium, a Spiritist symposium happening here in New